the MMA fortune teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller.
UFC 247 taking place February 8th. In my opinion, this card is very reminiscent to UFC 246 for the sheer fact that it's very top-heavy, very main event heavy. Of course, in the main event, we got Jon Bones Jones taking on Dominic Reyes. I can't wait to break down this fight for you guys. I do think that Dominic Reyes has a real chance to win this fight. And I'm going to go into detail here very soon on why I think he has a real chance to win this fight. Other than that, we got Valentina Shevchenko taking on Katlyn Chookagian. You guys know how I feel about Shevchenko. I feel that she's the best women's fighter walking on planet Earth. And then other than that, we got Big Juan Adams taking on Justin Tafa. You know that's going to be action. Juan Adams, a big friend of the show, a guy that you will be seeing me interview here on the channel sometime soon. Maybe after this fight, relatively soon after this fight, we'll celebrate his victory this Saturday. Other than that, we got the Black Beast taking on Ilir Latifi. And then as we work our way down the card, not the biggest of names, a lot of guys that are trying to make a name for themselves. Some guys that have been around for a while, but kind of just, been fighting their way towards the middle of the pack. We'll be breaking down all these fights here in a second. But first, let's do a little recap of what's going on in the world of MMA. Of course, a lot of stuff going down as of recently. Let's start off with Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal coming to words down over here in beautiful South Florida. Jorge Masvidal talking that shit, man, pointing his finger in Kamaru Usman's face, pulling the trigger. As you guys could see, Kamaru Usman was not having it. No fear in that man's eyes whatsoever. Comment below, who do you guys have winning that match? Because I'm telling you right now, you heard it here first. That is the next welterweight championship matchup. I guarantee it. That's the fight to make, and that's what's going to happen. So smart move on those guys. They're already getting that fight hyped up. I got Kamaru Usman winning that fight. I'll tell you right now. You guys don't have to wait to hear the breakdown video. I'm going to take Kamaru Usman. If anything changes, of course, you guys will hear it when the breakdown video comes out. But Kamaru Usman is just a whole nother animal. And I'll tell you the truth, Kamaru is really starting to grow on me. For those of you guys that also heard him on the Joe Rogan Experience here earlier this week, this guy's a really cool dude. He's really starting to show layers into his personality, and the guy's starting to grow on me. So I'm a big fan of Usman. And speaking of the Joe Rogan Experience, this past week has really been a treat for me. He's had multiple MMA fighters on the show, starting with Josh Thompson, Frankie Edgar, Kamaru Usman, as I just spoke about, Rafael Lovato Jr., and one that I really much enjoyed was the Josh Thompson episode, where Joe Rogan and Josh Thompson kind of went in depth on Stephen A. Smith, which was funny because for those of you guys that remember, I just pumped out a video after UFC 246 ripping Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith about just how completely horrid they are at breaking down the sport of MMA. I saw this. I smelt it coming. I smelt it out. Now it's starting to become a little bit of a thing. Josh Thompson really went into Stephen A. Smith. Joe Rogan said his little piece, but you could tell he's just being very polite about the whole thing. Since then, Stephen A. Smith had the nerve to clap back at Joe, where Joe then once rebutted on the show with Frankie Edgar not too long after that. But again, Joe Rogan's just really taking it easy on him. I would like to see Joe put Stephen A. Smith to the fire. Stephen A. Smith is definitely willing to come on the show. I've already heard this from numerous sources. Whether it's going to be on the Joe Rogan Experience or wherever it may be, Stephen A. Smith is ready to completely debate Joe Rogan. I don't know why Joe's backing down, at least as of now. This may be something that just brushes over, or maybe not. Remember, UFC 247, we got Jon Jones in the main event. This is a card that ESPN's going to be very much involved with. So don't be surprised when you see Stephen A. Smith back on the limelight, and maybe him and Joe start to set up this little debate thing, because I would love to see it. I would love to see Stephen A. Smith come on the Joe Rogan Experience, and for Joe to not take it easy on him and just absolutely roast this guy. But we'll leave it at that. All right, enough with the fight gossip. I know you guys want to get into this breakdown. And before we do, one last thing, I promise I'll make it quick. If you guys have not subscribed to the channel yet, please do like and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way for me over here. Also, a new thing, I will be throwing out my Venmo link and PayPal link for any of you guys that want to donate to the cause. It's much appreciated. And no way is it expected or whatnot, but if you guys are feeling generous enough to donate to the teller over here, it goes a long way for me. I will continue to put a lot of time into these breakdowns, and I will continue to upgrade the channel. I'm working on a few things over here, so it's much appreciated. And then lastly, of course, if you guys want to work with me on a one-on-one level, you guys know I am always open to that. You guys can inquire by shooting me a message, and of course that includes it all. Getting me on a one-on-one level. I will give you guys my tips and tricks that I have learned throughout the years. You guys will get all of my exclusive bets for each card. Remember, each card is usually, 12 to 13 fights. You cannot be betting on every one of these fights. So although you guys get my picks here, if you guys want my exclusive bets, I usually bet 1 to 3 fights per card. That's included. And I'm all ears for you guys. If you guys are targeting certain fights, you really want to bet on a certain fight, I'll really give you my advice on it, and I'll help mentor you guys to make some money. So that being said, it's fight time. We're going to get into this card here. UFC 247. Let's go. So right off the jump, we enter the very entertaining bantamweight division. We got Ewell taking on Jonathan Martinez. Andre Ewell, this is a guy a lot of people were high on. He enters the UFC for his debut against Renan Barão. And, and Renan Barão, this is, he's a fighter that has a big name. But those of you guys that know, like me, we knew that Renan Barão, his career was already over at this point. So Ewell was able to edge a split decision victory in that fight. And really, it wasn't as good in retrospect as a lot of people thought at the time. After that, he loses to Nathaniel Wood, does bounce back with a pretty decent win against Anderson Dos Santos, and then he loses in his last fight against Marlon Chito Vera. Marlon Chito Vera, a very skilled, very well-rounded fighter. And Chito Vera went out there, handled business, and finished Ewell. Now Ewell is taking a little bit of a step down in competition, in my opinion, against Jonathan Martinez, which is, a good reason why this fight's very interesting. We're going to see how Ewell bounces back after losing another fight, and now fighting a guy that, he has the ability to beat. But Jonathan Martinez is riding high right now, riding high with confidence, coming off 2 victories, both against Chinese fighters in Pingwen Liu and Weiji Buren. Before that, he did lose to Andre Sukumtat. Andre Sukumtat is not really a guy that you want to lose against inside the octagon. Jonathan Martinez, also, a very well-rounded fighter. His striking is not the best. He's long, he's rangy for the division, has a good reach for the weight division. So at only 25 years old, maybe we see him come in here and really start to branch off those 2 victories that he just had. As I said, the confidence is running high. And, Ewell coming off another loss. Maybe that's in his head a little bit. Ewell up in his 30s now. I'm going to take Martinez to win this fight. I just think that Martinez, I think it's a very close fight, but I think Martinez has the ability to easily win this fight. It's a close fight. I'm going to go with the younger fighter, the younger, hungrier, more confident fighter in Jonathan Martinez. But the fight it's a very hard fight to pick, and may or may not be a bet. Stay tuned. No need to go anywhere for this next fight. Staying right inside the bantamweight division, we got Domingo Pilarte taking on Journey Newsome. We'll start off with Domingo Pilarte. This is a guy, I remember he made his UFC, it wouldn't be his UFC debut, but his Dana White's Contender Series debut against Vince Morales, and that was a very entertaining fight. I remember watching that fight on the app on my phone over in Greece, and I was quite impressed with that fight. Back and forth war. Vince Morales, in my opinion, a very tough fighter, and and Pilarte really just showed to have an amazing heart in that fight. Ended up getting the rear naked choke in the second round. He refused to back down. He continuously walked forward, and he showed to have some good skills. The grappling is good. His Brazilian jiu-jitsu is very good. He could strike. He's a very well-rounded fighter. Did have a little setback in his last fight against Felipe Colares, who, for those of you guys that just saw Felipe Colares fight Montel Jackson this past weekend, holy shit. Colares is extremely tough. I don't remember the last time I seen a fighter take shots like that and just survive and smile in there and laugh and start to get a little bit of a resurgence in the octagon. An extremely tough fighter. Just had to touch up on that a little bit. But, that was a fight that I really expected Pilarte to win. And, it was a close fight, but he did take the L in that fight. So now he's fighting Journey Newsome. Journey Newsome, this is a guy that's he's going to be on the short end of the stick in regards to his height and his reach into this fight quite substantially. Pilarte is going to have almost, like a 6-7 inch reach advantage, a substantial height advantage. And I expect Domingo to really use that to his advantage to win this fight. I think he'll stay on the outside. He has good footwork. I could see him picking Journey apart. Journey Newsome, he's a skilled fighter as well. I'm not extremely high on him. He made his UFC debut against Ricardo Ramos. Ricardo Ramos is a very, very skilled fighter, a guy that's quite hot right now. So no real shame in that loss. But just running the tape back, I just don't see him winning this fight. I think Pilarte is going to use those advantages I talked about. Newsome does have good boxing. Although, he's smaller for the weight class, his boxing is going to be good. His footwork will be good as well. He does carry a lot of power in his hands. So this is a guy that can put a lot of guys out in the bantamweight division. So, if he uses his footwork properly and is able to get on the inside, you can see this guy Newsome lay some guys out inside the octagon. That's definitely a possibility. But, at the end of the day, I'm going to go at Domingo Pilarte to use those advantages that I talked about to win this fight. In the next bout, we are still not going anywhere, still staying right inside this bantamweight division. And speaking of this fight, Miles Johns versus Mario Bautista, and touching up upon these last two fights I just talked about, we can easily see some of the winners from these fights matching up against each other in their next bouts. So don't be surprised if you see that as well. But in this fight here, we got Miles Johns taking on Mario Bautista. A lot of respect for this guy, Miles Johns. This guy made me quite a bit of money in his last fight against Cole Smith. It was a very closely contested match, but at the end of the day, this guy put money in my pocket. This guy's a skilled fighter. I've liked what I've seen from him from the beginning, from back in the LFA days, all the way up into his Contender Series debut against Richie Santiago, and then, of course, in his UFC debut. As I stated, it was a closely contested matchup, but he ended up getting his arm raised. The guy shows that he has good heart. He's a very good wrestler, an above-average wrestler, and his striking is coming around. So now he's taking on this guy, Mario Bautista. This guy is a tough fighter. He's been around the block as well. He's had some LFA fights. He's fought over there in Combate. And, and then he had his UFC debut against Corey Sandhagen, which you guys know the deal with Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen pulled off the armbar, quite possibly one of the best bantamweight fighters in the world. So that was a tough go for him. Got finished early in that fight. But then he did bounce back with a nice win against Jin Soo Sun, who, in my opinion, is not a good fighter. That's a guy he's very below average. I do not expect to see him in the octagon again. So, this is going to be a good matchup to really gauge where Mario Bautista is. He's fighting a real fighter now, Miles Johns. I'm going to go with Miles Johns. I like him, as I stated, above average wrestling, an extremely tough fighter, a little bit small for the weight division. I mean, his height's a little small and whatnot. The reach isn't that bad, and he is stout, but he's a little short for the weight division. But he uses his fight style to make up for that. Bautista fighting out of the MMA lab. These guys, he's training with some real fighters out there over in Glendale, Arizona. So this guy is no fluke. He's young. I expect him to come out here and really expect to get his hand raised. But I like Miles Johns here. I like Miles Johns to win this fight. So stay tuned and see how this plays out. Andrea KGB Lee taking on Lauren Murphy, taking place in the flyweight women's division. Andrea Lee, she really dropped the ball in her last fight against Joanne Calderwood. That was a fight that would have really, really pushed her to the top. If she would have won that fight, it would have just been, I mean, at least what? A 4-fight win streak inside the octagon since she made her debut. Taking out girls like Montana De La Rosa, Ashley Evans Smith, Veronica Macedo. Her resume would have been sitting there nice, and she really dropped the ball. I do believe that Joanne Calderwood has really made a resurgence in her career, so no real shame in that loss. Calderwood is definitely a capable fighter, but you really wanted to see KGB win that fight because she would have been working her way right up to a title shot. But she has a chance right here to bounce right back against Lauren Murphy. Lauren Murphy, an older fighter, a crafty veteran, a strong female, who's coming off a nice win against Mara Romero Barella. That really put her back in line to try to do something here, especially if she gets a win against Andrea Lee here too. So I don't see it happening. I like Andrea Lee to win this fight. I think she gets right back on track. KGB, the thing that I didn't like in her last fight when she lost is that she started to kind of, I don't want to say she gassed out. She kind of just like fizzled. And I really didn't like that because what's going to happen when a girl like Lauren Murphy, who's not as skilled as you, what's going to happen when she keeps pushing that pace all the way to the third round and continues to throw down with you? I mean, are you going to fizzle away like you did in that fight again? I really didn't like her output in that last fight. And it just kind of showed me some red flags in her game. Hopefully she'll work on that. She's still very dangerous. Her striking's good. Her ground game's good. I love her fighting style in the clinch. Leah's just nasty in the clinch. Good knees, good elbows. But it's weird. It just looked like she had an adrenaline jump. However you want to say that, an adrenaline dump, excuse me. Because she really just faded in that fight, and I feel that's the reason why she lost that fight. Although, again, that was a split decision loss, so I am being hard on her. I mean, she made it a close fight, but that was a fight that she really should have just ran away with, in my opinion, and she faded. So, Lauren Murphy coming off a solid victory, training at a gyms like the MMA Lab, and she's been putting in time in a lot of good gyms. So this is a girl that's, she could be dangerous to bet against that, especially where these odds are, because Lauren Murphy right now, you can get her around plus 280. Andrea Lee is around a minus 340. So, if you're going to take Lee, you're going to want to parlay her with something. And that could be the right move. It really could be the right move. So if you have another solid play, for those of you guys that are believing big in John Jones, maybe you want to parlay Lee with John Jones. But we're going to touch upon that fight here in a little bit as well. And, that's a dangerous fight for Jones. So, but we'll get there in a minute. So, but of course, Andrea Lee to win the fight, as long as she doesn't fizzle and fade and Murphy doesn't really rise to the occasion. This is Lee's fight to win. We got a short notice opponent here, and Kalinn Williams taking on Alex the Great White Morono. I've been watching a lot of tape on this guy, Kalinn Williams, since I've heard that he was taking this fight on short notice. I have not been overly impressed from what I saw from him. Maybe I'm wrong. It could just be bad tape. I mean, the guy is definitely a strong athlete. But as far as his wrestling credentials, I've seen this guy taken down, and I've seen him just get mounted and whatnot. And eventually, yes, he did work his way out of it and came back and won that fight. But I didn't like the technique I saw in the grappling exchanges. I think that Alex Morono, this is a guy that a lot of people underestimate. Doesn't have the most physically imposing type of look. He's not that muscular. But this is a guy that's very, very technically sound. The striking's good. People underestimate the power as well. I mean, this guy's put guys away. I like Morono. I like Morono to win this fight. Morono's been, training for Diego Lima for quite a while. Now that Williams is stepping in on short notice, I don't think you'll have the same amount of preparation that Morono would have put into this fight. And I think that even if Williams had the preparation that Morono had, I still don't think he would win the fight. But sometimes, sometimes these young guys, they make their UFC debut and sometimes they shock the world and whatnot. I just don't see that happening here. I think Morono comes in and he handles business. So, and shout out to Morono too, a guy that's been continuously, in my opinion, underrated. A guy that's been just, stringing off victories. He's on a 3-fight win streak right now. I think he'll be 4 after this weekend. He's dropped the ball against, Keita Nakamura and Jordan Mean. But other than that, this guy does not lose fights. Quite literally. This guy just does not lose fights as of recently. So, let him get this victory here. And let's see Morono get a quality opponent in his next match. A guy with a name. I would like to see that. Morono is going to win this fight here. Moving over to the next fight, we got Trevin, the Problem, Giles taking on Antônio Arroyo, a guy I was very impressed with on his Dana White's Contender Series debut against Steven Regman. I really liked the way he looked in that fight. Did have a little setback against Andre Muniz, who has shown to be a very skilled fighter. Trevin Giles, this is a guy, he comes into this fight once again as the favorite, continuously enters as the favorite. A lot of people like this guy. I don't necessarily see it. He lost his last 2 fights by guillotine choke. The guy definitely has holes in his submission defense game. Gerald Meerschaert really just dominated him on the mat. Ended up getting that choke in the 3rd round. Zach Cummings before that got the guillotine choke in the 3rd round. And those are 2 very skilled jiu-jitsu practitioners. But at the same time, the guillotine choke is a little bit more of an elementary type of submission. Used to be my go-to. Used to get people with it all day. But, when you go against skilled jiu-jitsu guys, they should be defending that. So it also may show he has a little bit of a problem with his cardio. Did seem to get a little bit worn out in those late rounds. And as I said, he enters here as the favorite against a guy in Arroyo that I like Arroyo. I think Arroyo has some really nasty striking. The jiu-jitsu is there as well. The Brazilian fighter, his jiu-jitsu is not bad. I could see him using his striking, holding his own on the feet and eventually maybe getting this fight to the mat and exploiting Giles' submission defense game as well. Giles' wrestling is not bad. He's a tough dude, carries power in his hands as well. But I'm going to go with the underdog here. I like Antônio Arroyo to win the fight. And I think, Arroyo needs to start polishing up his game a little bit, compose himself in there. And this guy should string off some victories inside the octagon here. We got a straight LFA matchup in this next bout. We got Youssef Zalal, the Moroccan Devil, taking on Austin Lingo, the undefeated fighter, 7-0. So only gone the distance twice. Other than that, he's knocking dudes out. He's submitting them, rear naked chokes, guillotine chokes. This guy, he looks to be the real deal over here. And this is going to be a solid fight. The winner of this is going to start to try to make a name for themselves inside the octagon. Youssef Zalal, going to be a little bit more rangy. He's a nasty striker himself, coming off a nasty flying knee victory against Jamie Hernandez in his last bout. But before that, coming off 2 losses on the local scene, you don't really like to see that for a guy, making his way towards the UFC. But I think the UFC like what they've seen from him. He's a very entertaining fighter, at least, so he may not be the most skilled fighter, but he's going to go out there. He may get a flashy knockout. He may get dominated in one fight. They're going to give him his chance here. Austin Lingo, in my opinion, looks to me to be the more well-rounded fighter with a little bit more promise to make a run long-term. Training out of Fortis MMA, this guy's getting good training. He's a strong fighter. He's a strong Texas boy here, and I'm going to take Lingo to get this victory here.
Derrick, why'd you take your pants off? My balls were
The one and only Derrick, the Black Beast Lewis. He's taking on Ilir, the Sledgehammer Latifi here. In this heavyweight matchup, Latifi's making his heavyweight debut. Or he might have fought a heavyweight sometime in the past, I do believe, possibly. But he hasn't fought a heavyweight in a long time, so this is definitely a little bit of a change for him. And maybe it's much needed because from what I've been seeing from Latifi as of recently, it has not looked good for him. In that Vulcan fight, you saw the interviews leading up to that fight. He looked like he was out of it before he ever stepped foot into the octagon. As soon as Vulcan started to tag him up with the boxing, he was looking for a way out of that fight. And I think this fight is going to be a bad matchup for him. Derrick Lewis carries a lot of power. He's going to tag him. Is Latifi going to look for a way out as soon as he gets tagged by the Black Beast here? Derrick Lewis, this is a guy that, in my opinion, has very, very underrated. He has an underrated get-up game. You take this guy down, he continuously gets back up to his feet. I don't see Latifi holding him down whatsoever. I see this being a striking match, and I think Lewis carries the power. He's going to have the reach advantage, the size advantage. He's going to throw some bombs on Latifi, and I don't know what it is. I just feel like Latifi has one foot out the game. I think that's why you see him going up to heavyweight. I think he's collecting maybe one last paycheck or one of his last paychecks. I don't really know what's going on with him, but something seems a little off. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, look at the fighter interviews with him going into his last fight. Something's up with him. This is a tailor-made matchup, in my opinion, for Derrick Lewis. And Derrick Lewis, man, an underrated fighter. I mean, we got to talk about one thing. I always bring it up whenever we're talking about Derrick Lewis, but hey, fuck it. I got to be real with you guys. I had a big-time ticket in my hand when he was taking on Alexander Volkov. Of course, UFC 229, Conor versus Khabib. I had the ticket in my hand. I just was about to walk up to cash it out. It was worth thousands of dollars. I'm joking, of course, I was going to cash it out after the event, but, I was ready to walk up to the ticket booth. And what do you think happens with 11 seconds in the fight? One of the biggest comebacks you'll ever see. You could never count out the Black Beast, man. An extremely tough guy. Although he does have some cardio issues, he doesn't lose the power, and he'll still be throwing bombs until the last second. We've seen him do it time and time again. And I just feel like he's going to get some shots off at one point in time in this fight, and I don't think Latifi's going to like it. Latifi doesn't have the greatest cardio either, so man, I think this is a tailor-made matchup for the Black Beast, and the line kind of shows it. A lot of people are high on the Black Beast here in this spot, and I expect him to get a finish in there. Moving our way through the main card, we got Dan Ige taking on Mirsad Bektic. This is a solid bout here. Mirsad Bektic at one point in time was touted as one of the top prospects. I've been following this guy since he was about 19 years old. This guy has been training with American Top Team way back. He's since been putting time over there with TriStar. The guy's just had some top-level training, and he is a physical specimen as well. But he is coming off a nasty loss against Josh Emmett where he was completely put unconscious. So we're going to see how he bounces back, after that loss. And, of course, he had the horrible knockout as well against Darren Elkins. And speaking of one-sided fights where the other guy comes back and pulls it off, I mean, that Darren Elkins fight had to be one of the greatest comebacks ever, too. But just to touch up on 2 times that Bektic's brain has really taken some damage. This is a guy, I really truly believe that. I feel like this guy has taken some severe damage, and if he's connected on, he will be put out again. He has chin issues. And then you got a guy in Dan Ige. This is a guy that has some really good jiu-jitsu and grappling skills, but can also throw down on the feet as well. Coming off 4 solid victories in a row against Mike Santiago, Jordan Griffin, Danny Henry, Kevin Aguilar. These are all solid opponents. Of course, he did lose to his doppelganger, whatever you want to call it, his identical twin in Julio Arce, who's a very skilled opponent as well. But that was a closely contested match as well. Julio Arce, very good. He's a very good fighter there. And, Ige is the real deal. He really is the real deal. He's going to pull off a lot of victories inside the UFC. And now he's fighting a guy in Mirsad Bektic that is a very skilled fighter. And if he doesn't get that knockout, if he doesn't shut the lights off, it could be a long night for Dan Ige. We'll have to see how this fight transpires. I'm going to go with Bektic. Like I said, I've been following this guy for such a long time. He's been training with the best of them. He really is a top-level talent. But he needs to work on his defense and training at the gyms that he's been training at, and now training at TriStar. I know they're really putting in time on his defense. Faraz Sahabi knows this guy can't take shots like that anymore. So I expect his defense to really be on point for this fight. He might fight a little careful in there. You'll see he'll probably try to use his grappling a little bit and probably come in and out with the strikes. He's not going to sit there and try to engage in a war. And, I think he does have good fighter IQ, and I think he's a solid fighter. And he's going to need some more time to let that chin rest. He's going to have to... It's going to be tough, fighting inside the octagon against these guys like Dan Ige, these absolute beasts of fighters that are going to be coming for his chin. It's going to be tough to let that chin continuously heal up, because I am a believer that when you take these types of knockouts, the more time that transpires without you getting clipped like that again, it helps your chin. And if you continuously get knocked out like that, you might reach a point of no return. So Bektic cannot afford to be tagged in this fight. But I do think that he'll avoid the big shot. He'll try to make this a grappling event. He really will. He's going to continuously shoot for takedowns. Expect Bektic to hold Ige against the cage, get some takedowns, and we'll see if Ige can use his jiu-jitsu, to benefit him to win this fight. Either way, it's going to be a high-level matchup right here, and I got Bektic winning the fight. We got a big-time entertaining fight right here. Big Juan Adams taking on Justin Tafa. You know, I say it time and time again, man. Shout out to Big Juan Adams. This guy's a super cool dude. I'm going to be doing an interview with him sometime in the near future. I've talked with him. This is a guy that I'm high on. I really believe this guy has a lot of potential, you know, with his future. He's only 28 years old. This is a real super heavyweight. This guy makes the cut just to make 266 pounds. This is a guy that's a real wrestler in the heavyweight division. This guy has real wrestling credentials. And, you know, this guy, he's coming around. You know, he really is coming around. You're going to see. Time will tell with this guy. He is coming off a tough loss against Greg Hardy. That was a fight that, you know, may have been stopped a little bit early. But nevertheless, you know, he knows he made a mistake in that fight. I've talked to him about it. Juan Adams, he knows he made a mistake in that fight. That's a fight, in my opinion, if he would have just took his time, relaxed a little bit, not let that hype and that energy get to him. He should have took his time in that fight. Greg Hardy has shown that he has issues with his cardio. I think that Adams really could have drowned him in the later rounds and used his wrestling, and I think he really could have put a beating on good old Hardy there with his ground and pound. That's a fight that I really, truly want to see happen again in the future. I don't know if we will see that fight again. You know, I want to talk to Adams about that. I think he really needs to string off some victories and push for that rematch because he will win that rematch. I truly believe that. He played that fight a little bit wrong. You know, he went right into the action quickly, and you know, Hardy is a sprinter, and you know, he got caught with a little shot, but it's all right. You know, before that, you know, he looked very good in a fight against Arjun Buehler. It was a very closely contested matchup. In my opinion, even though he lost that fight, he really showed gains in that fight from his last fight. The cardio looked better. He was pushing the pace in the third round. He was still, you know, fighting strong. And then before that, you know, butchered Chris De La Rocha up. Chris De La Rocha, an older fighter, but a true veteran, you know, crafty fighter. You saw what he did against Sean Teed and his Dana White's Contender Series debut. I mean, the ground and pound is nasty. And that's what you're going to see from Juan Adams. When he gets on top of these guys that make the mistake, you know, maybe not make the mistake, they might not have no choice. When Juan Adams uses his wrestling and gets these fights to the mat, the ground and pound is going to be there. The power is going to be there, and he's going to shut a lot of guys' lights out. So mark my words, you will be seeing that. And this is a great matchup for him against Justin Tafa. This guy doesn't have a lot of UFC fights, so you know, they're pretty similar as far as their amount of experience, although Adams does have more. But it's nice to see Adams fight a guy like this who's working his way through the game. But a guy that's coming off a nasty knockout against Yorgan De Castro, who Yorgan De Castro is a skilled opponent. So no real shame in that loss, but you're going to see Juan Adams is going to go out there. He's going to handle business. I expect a finish. I really want to see Juan use his wrestling. I think that's a path to victory inside the octagon that can be used by him for a lot of times in the near future here. So that's what I want to see from him, but don't be surprised if the fight takes place in the feet and Adams catches him with some power punches as well. Adams carries a lot of power. And I'm rolling with my dog here, Juan Adams, to get the finish inside the octagon. Here we go. We got the co-main event of the evening. I've said it time and time again, and you're going to hear it time and time again. Valentina Shevchenko, the greatest women's fighter walking planet Earth right now, taking on Katlyn Chookagian. Chookagian, a point fighter, a girl that, you know, she sits in the pocket or you know, towards the center of the octagon, and she'll exchange with you for 15 minutes. This is going to be a completely different fight. This isn't going to be a close split decision fight like Chookagian usually has. This is going to be Shevchenko's fight to take here. I expect a finish. I expect something violent. If it does go 5 rounds, which it does have the ability to go, of course, I think Shevchenko just absolutely dominates, uses her striking, and shows that she's on a completely different level, you know, with her mixed martial arts abilities. You know, Shevchenko, man, this is a girl, you know, I say it, I'm going to say it again. You know, this is a girl that, in my opinion, got robbed against Amanda Nunes in the second fight for sure, in the split decision loss. And I had her win in the first fight against Amanda Nunes as well, even though that was a unanimous decision. I don't like either of those calls, and if it wasn't for that, she would have only lost to one other fighter in Liz Carmouche, which was very early in her career, and she was wrestle-fucked. And since then, you know, went out and absolutely dominated Liz Carmouche. So Once Valentina gets that rematch against Amanda Nunes, pulls that victory off. If Nunes wants it again, she'll pull off another victory, and she'll be the GSP of the women's bantamweight division, or flyweight division now, whatever you want to call it. She'll be the GSP of women's MMA, in my opinion. This girl ain't going anywhere. She's very professional. She's dangerous. She takes the game so serious. I mean, you see the way she bounces around, training all different parts of the world, like just living there, putting in her entire life into the game. She's nasty, and this may be a fight it's going to be a similar type of fight to the Jessica Eye match, where Jessica Eye just got completely decapitated, because Chookagian's going to sit there. She's going to try to exchange. She's a little bit sloppy with her striking. It's not horrible compared to some of the other women in the flyweight division and whatnot, but it's a whole different ball game with Valentina. The bullet is for real, and don't be surprised if you see a nasty finish, maybe a spinning back fist, a head kick knockout, something like that. So this should be a good fight. I always look forward to seeing Valentina, man, when she's on the card. So I'm excited for this fight. So here we go. We made it to the main event of the card. We got Jon Jones taking on Dominic Reyes. Of course, I did touch a little bit upon this fight earlier in the breakdown video. So I did show my cards a little bit, but I'm going to get into depth here why I do believe that, that Jon Jones is not as much as a lock to win this fight as a lot of you guys believe that he is. Yes, I get it. He's a great fighter. The guy has never lost a fight in his life. Yes, technically he lost the Matt Hamill fight, but we all know he didn't lose that fight. It was just a technical default. And the guy's an amazing fighter. But as of recently, I have not liked what I've been seeing. First off against Anthony Smith, and then especially in his last fight against Thiago Santos. This is a guy that's really playing it safe out there. He of course, Santos carries a lot of power, and he didn't want to get knocked out, but he was on his back foot for the majority of that fight. And I didn't like the way it looked. And I get it. You got to play it smart, solid game planning, avoiding the power. But at the same time, now you're starting to flirt with the judges' scorecards. And you saw that in that fight. It was a split decision, a victory for Jon Jones. And, I had him winning the fight. Don't get it twisted. But my point is, he's letting these fights play out closer and closer. And, I think that he knows he's getting up there in age. Not that he's old or anything, but, he's been through some wars in the past. Alexander Gustafsson, the first fight comes to mind. But, he's been in some battles. Up at the light heavyweight division, these guys, they carry a lot of power. It only takes one shot, and he knows that. Here's the thing. You get another guy like Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes locked in there with you. This guy carries just as much power as Thiago Santos. Trust me on that. We saw Dominic Reyes in his last fight against Chris Weidman. It was disgusting. The power is disgusting. And, I think it's really going to come down to which of each of these fighters steps into the cage. So as I said, Jon Jones has had times as of recently not looking the best, looking a little hesitant in there. We've seen the same thing with Dominic Reyes, though, too. Dominic Reyes, before his last fight, which he looked amazing against Chris Weidman. Before that, I had him losing to Volkan Ozdemir. So that was not a good look for him. But he's really just shown to me that he's a solid fighter. He's undefeated. He carries power. He's an athletic freak. I've looked up a lot of his tape. Forget about just his fight tape. I've seen him out there, playing the safety position in Division I football. The guy's a stud athlete. Not that always translates into fighting, but Jon Jones was a guy that could barely make the starting lineup on his high school roster. And Dominic Reyes is a true athlete. Who, in my opinion, is getting better fight by fight. This guy, he hasn't been training mixed martial arts his entire life. So when you take guys like that, while they're still at a solid age, they're just getting better by the day. And he's a dangerous fighter. But to just go in depth on what I've seen on tape and what I know when it comes to Jon Jones, because I know every single one of his fights like the back of my hand. Jon Jones, I think the safest path to victory, in my opinion, is to really use his grappling and his wrestling. Dominic Reyes really hasn't fought any top-notch wrestlers in his mixed martial arts career. So, I would like to see Jon Jones try to exploit the grappling aspect of this fight, maybe get a takedown, work his elbows and his ground and pound in a similar fashion to what he did to Alexander Gustafsson in the second fight. I think that if he's going to come out here and really shock us, or I guess not so much shock us because it is Jon Jones, but if he's going to come out here and really make a big statement and just put an explanation mark on this fight, it's going to be to go out there and go out with a bang with the ground and pound. If he keeps it on the feet, I really don't see him doing anything spectacular to Dominic Reyes in the feet. I could see him maybe edging a decision. Yes, Jon Jones' striking is not bad at all. He's very technical in there. He plays it safe, and he's a dangerous striker as well. But I think it would be more of a 5-round decision type of fight where he's still putting himself in danger to be knocked out by Dominic Reyes. Which, getting into Dominic Reyes, I think his striking is nasty. I do. I think he's a nasty athlete. I think he's a sick striker. He does have a little bit of wrestling, supposedly, but I don't think it would be on the level of Jon Jones's. Jon Jones is a spectacular wrestler. We've seen him locked in there with guys like Daniel Cormier and out-wrestle Cormier. So, and if you look into his accolades, even though he never went that far with it because he ended up getting his girlfriend at the time pregnant, and he had a daughter on the way. He never was able to really soar in his wrestling career, but the guy is an absolute stud of a wrestler. The line, where the line's at, Jon Jones, in the -400, -500 range, depending where you're making your bets. If you guys feel comfortable taking him, he's one of the true greats. You can maybe throw him in a parlay. I just think it's a little bit risky. I think there may be a little bit of value on Reyes to win this fight. These are, as I said, just two absolute stud athletes. You never know what's going to happen in there. Think about this fight right now as we're talking about this fight. Oh, Jon Jones is so great, this and that. Oh, he's going to win this fight easily. You're looking at the line. You think that's an easy parlay. But, think about once Buffer starts announcing their names, the cage is locked, and they square off. You're going to be biting your nails. This might be one of those types of fights that, that goes down to the wire. It may be a war like the first fight with Gustafsson. We'll have to stay tuned. I'm excited to see how this fight plays out. Of course, I'll take Jon Jones to win the fight. It's very hard to doubt him at this point in his career. But just remember, every dog has its day. And Jon Jones cannot just continuously win all these fights. I do smell a loss coming his way sometime within the next 3 to 4 fights. I really, truly believe that. If there was a line in that, I would say the favorite side would be that he's going to lose a fight. There's just a bunch of these nasty light heavyweight, whatever you want to call them, prospects or, top 5 fighters, top 10 fighters. These guys are working their way through the ranks, and they're savages. So... but again, Jon Jones is the pick. Be careful with what you do in that. With this fight, be careful how you play it. Make sure you're making the right decision. And that's gonna conclude UFC 247. I'm trying to get this video out to you guys a little bit early, and it should be up here by the latest Friday morning, hopefully late Thursday night. And I hope this video helps you guys out. As I stated earlier, don't ever hesitate to get at me, DM me on Instagram, message me here. If you guys are interested in working together, getting my exclusive bets and my exclusive picks, please do subscribe to the channel, like this video. And on that note, signing out, The Teller.